Why is it fun to draw the same thing over and over again? I've heard many people outside of the artistic community bring this up, usually with varying tones of condescension. Why do you always draw anime kids? Why do you draw only crocodiles and other reptiles? Why do you only draw portraits or focus on landscapes? It's as if the outside world feels like there's something intrinsically wrong with working on the same thing over and over again, with dedicating time to something specific. Right off the bat, this seems odd because we do this in so many other areas of our life. No one would really condemn someone for focusing so much time on football or on their career or on reading or even on being a Tolkien nerd. Perhaps sometimes this would come up as condescending because you play too many video games, because the stuff that you read isn't what other people think you should read, because you spend too much time indoors and not enough time outdoors. All of this, though, seems to be focused from the outside in. And why is it so fun to come back to the same thing time and time again, to draw dragons only, to paint flowers and nothing else? Is there something wrong about this? For so many of us, art provides sanctuary. It is a safe place. It is something comforting and known, something that we can come back to, that reassures us that all is as well as it can be in the world. When you come back to the same thing that you draw all the time, there's control there. You have autonomy over what you're doing. The rest of life can carry on and be as chaotic as it often is, as it is particularly right now. But when you come back to that sketchbook, to your canvas, to your paper, and you sit down, you take a deep sigh or a deep breath, and begin to work, everything comes back to you. You're in control of that arena. When I sit down to draw a robot, I find that it's 25% of the stress of sitting down to design a portrait or to draw something for an artistic challenge of some kind, something to put in the gallery at some point. Those kinds of things have their purpose. There's nothing wrong with those. But to just sit down and draw my robots or draw dragons or draw eldritch abominations, it's just comforting. There's something beautiful, relaxing about coming back to the things that you've done so many times before. And of course, for so many of us, art is a meditative, relaxing exercise. It's a hobby that we engage in because it makes our lives better. Maybe it's stress relieving from the difficulties of school, the difficulties of life. Maybe it's got other ambitions attached to it. But at its heart, there's something about the art that we make that we enjoy, that makes our life better. And it is comforting to come back to something we understand. So many people reread books or read books only in a particular genre. So many people binge watch Netflix shows or go back to the same show time and time again, replaying old video games, going on the same hikes, and yet we don't really condemn those things. So if you find that when you come back to your sketchbook, you always return to the same thing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's comfort in the known. There's comfort in what you understand and what you've invested so much time into. I find this in my own life. I found this as a teacher, and there's kind of a beauty there. Perhaps the biggest issue here is actually the fact that people on the outside seem to find it so necessary to commentate on what we as artists do. Maybe this happens because they don't understand us, because we seem strange. We do make up a small portion of the population. We have a tendency to be quirky. There's maybe a propensity towards higher levels of neurodivergence in the artistic community, but it still doesn't make it okay that everyone seems to need to throw their opinion into the ring. Their opinions primarily are not important. As we are investing time into a hobby generally, it is not that important what other people think about what you're drawing, what you're painting, what you're sculpting. Those kinds of things, for most of us, are our downtime. They are our hobby time. The stuff that we put time into when we are relaxing, when we're done with a hard day's work, or we're detaching from the difficulties of normal life. We don't need your commentary. We don't need your approval. If we want to sit down and draw dragons and dinosaurs, if we want to design trains or spaceships that could actually fold space-time, What is that to you? Art remains just enough on the outside, just enough on the fringes of what the rest of the world does, that it's always going to come with some odd critiques, some odd thoughts. I hardly get through a week without somebody throwing out some comment about something, and not even here online. Just there's always comments about the tendencies of artists, about how weird or strange or quirky they are, or unpredictable, or how beauty is in the eye. There's so many things. And in my youth, they bothered me. Even I had some desire to gain approval from folk when I was younger, though probably not as much as most people due to some of my idiosyncrasies. But it was always nice when I ran into one or two people who understood what I was doing or did something that was similar. The first time I ran into another student who worked on world building, who built stories out and developed races and languages and all these things, it was thrilling. It was exciting, particularly just to not be alone, to know that there are other people who are doing these same kinds of things, who are pulling joy from these same kind of things. But that student also pretty much dedicated all of his artistic time to a single thing. And when I was teaching, especially in middle and high school, most of the kids drew one thing, one kind of thing. And there was always kind of this academic, intellectual push against that. And I understand if you are trying to grow as an artist, if you are trying to learn and be well-rounded as an artist, there is a need, a push, a pressure to expand your horizons, to learn other things, to learn about things that are challenging or outside of your comfort zone. That makes sense. I'm not really talking about that here, though. In our personal lives, which I would wager for 95% of you who are listening right now, you choose to make art on a personal level. Art that is making your life better or is trying to achieve something specific to your life, something that you want. And therefore, the commentary, the direction, the instruction from other people is less relevant. Not irrelevant, perhaps, because art is generally done for humans, and so some reflex from them is probably okay. And especially if you're trying to grow or learn something, it's always good to lean on people who know a little bit more than you. Goodness, I do that all the time. Every time I want to put together a new instructional video, which is ironic perhaps, passing on the knowledge that I have or just doing it with my unique spin, I will often look up how other people have done it, particularly to see if there's some easier way to convey what it is. And I learn things. I learn things every single time that I look in someone's art book or I go watch their video. I learn things every single time. And I find that, ironically, with a lot of the professional artists that I really enjoy, that I admire, they tend to work on one thing primarily as well. Maybe this is just human nature and artists get a lot of flack for it. Back in the day, people pretty much dedicated themselves to a single craft. Sometimes you didn't have the ability to even choose it. It was something that you just fell into because that was the family business. That must have been difficult. Thinking about that for a moment, that must have been difficult. If you were a really creative kid, and you were growing up and your dad was a farmer, and that was just what you knew you were going to have to do. And maybe it was really specific. Your dad was a dairy farmer, and you just knew that's what I have to do with my life. Or maybe you didn't like getting dirty and your dad was a blacksmith. Or maybe your dad owned a bookshop or a library or something and you didn't like reading. Maybe back in the day you had dyslexia and nobody knew it and they just thought you were dumb, which is so condescending and terrible. But these things must have happened, right? They must have been so hard. But for human history, it seems that most humans have fallen into a single track when given the option. And maybe this is how humans work best. I don't know. I'm kind of just pontificating now, but there is a chance that this obsession that we see in human history, people who dedicated themselves to a single craft, sometimes for an entire lineage, that was respected. It was looked well upon. And now in our modern day where we don't have to do that with the same intensity, it's almost frowned upon when we as artists decide we're going to work on one thing predominantly. And it's so ironic to me when it's not professional, when it's basically just this thing that you're doing because it makes your life better and it brings you joy. So if you've gotten any pressure, if you've felt bad, if you've felt guilt or embarrassed because you as an artist tend to focus on one thing and one thing primarily, I just hope that I can help alleviate that in some degree. It's fine if all you want to do is draw your comics. It's fine if all you want to do is paint portraits, even though people around you are telling you to branch out and try other things. Is it good to branch out? Yes, it is. But I don't think you should branch out of guilt. I don't think you should try different subject areas because you feel it's right or because somebody else is pressuring you to do so. Yes, I think it's good to try new mediums. It's good to try drawing new things. But if your comfort zone is just drawing dragons, it makes your life better, and that's the role that art has in your life, you can just go ahead and ignore all the other folk that are telling you what to do, that are pushing you in other directions. There's no problem with just spending time with your dragons, or your dinosaurs, or your trains, or your robots, or your portraits, or your anime characters. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're receiving pressure from somewhere else, maybe even from yourself, it's okay to acknowledge it and to move on. The caveat here, of course, and I kind of already alluded to it, is I do think as a teacher, as an artist, it is good to branch out. But it's not good to branch out because somebody else tells you to. It's good to branch out because it makes you more whole as an artist. Because trying other things can share with you new loves. I've run into this most frequently in my life when I started branching out with new foods. Things that made me gag or were kind of disgusting to me at first. But every once in a while you run into something and you go, oh my goodness, I've lived my life up to this point without this. And I can't imagine moving forward without it. So if you find that you come back to one thing as your main artistic motivation, the single thing that you spend time working on, that's okay. Draw your robots, draw your dragons, draw your dinosaurs, draw your whatever, and enjoy it. Suck the marrow out of life and enjoy your time with your art. Well, as always, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. This was a little rambly perhaps, but it's kind of what felt like the right thing to talk about today. A little bit of like pressure on my heart about like, I think I'm gonna go with this and see what comes out of it. I would love to hear from you, what your thoughts are on this subject, and if there's any other subjects like this that you'd like to have me talk about in the future. I love being able to build a video that feels like it's a response to the community, even if it's just one person. It just feels more authentic that way. It's easier for me to get motivated to put it together and to build things because it feels like, hey, at least there's one person out there who this is going to resonate with. So if you have anything like that, feel free to share it below. I read every comment. I love them and I appreciate them tremendously. Thank you to my patrons as well, who are on the screen right now. If you want to check out my Patreon or the Discord server, they are both linked in the description below. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon, and go draw whatever your obsession is.